Hi there, and welcome to another episode of 411 Pop Culture, where real people talk about really everything. I'm your host, Justin Steele. With me today is Gina McLaughlin. How you doing today, Gina?
I'm doing well.
Good. And tonight we're going to talk about some more Charmed. You know, Charmed is a beloved show that carried fans through 8 seasons of spells, family drama, and fun. And the Charmed ones often faced a barrage of warlocks, witches, or other underworldly characters and villains. So tonight we're going to talk about some of our favorite villains throughout the 8 seasons of Charmed. Now, we've discussed in our previous Charmed episode that I'm more of a fan of like the first 3 seasons. You prefer from 4 on. That's not to say I don't love the later seasons and that you don't love the earlier seasons. It's just when I watch them, I find that I end up watching like the first 3 seasons is what I really love. So I'm going to talk about my 5. We're going to do our top 10 villains of Charmed. My top 5 are going to be from the first 3 seasons. Gina's top 5 are going to be from some of the later seasons. But don't forget to comment below or subscribe. Let us know some of your favorite Charmed villains. But starting off right off the bat, from the first season episode, The Fourth Sister, one of my favorite villains is Callie. She was in the episode starring Danielle Harris, who is a young witch wannabe, but she sort of is like getting powers from this sort of mirror witch that's like in her mirror. And personally, you know, I'm a big fan of Danielle Harris, so that's a big reason of why I love this episode. But the witch in it, she's appropriately creepy. You know, something's a little off, the sort of way that she's sort of like talking to Danielle Harris's character, but then like her eyes get all like fiery and creepy, and she's a pretty easy kill for the Charmed ones. But again, I like the dynamic of like how these because in the first season the sisters are still rather dysfunctional, I would say, or kind of coming back together, and I like that it's sort of to throw that stress on a little bit more is sort of Danielle Harris's character, who's sort of like a younger Phoebe, I would say. And I really like that episode, though. Do you remember that episode at all?
Yeah.
No.
It's definitely a good one, and
at least for like the earlier seasons, you know, it's still a little cheesy and all that. And then, you know, another favorite of mine is the Grimlocks. They first appear in the episode Out of Sight, but I just think they're super creepy with those eyes, or they like steal the eyes of children. And they're like creepy in themselves, like living in the sewers and stuff. I feel like though when fans look back on Charmed, those are some of the villains that people really remember.
Yeah, I tend to agree.
Yeah. And then I also really like Shax from All Hell Breaks Loose. I don't know how I would feel if it was any different, but because he did take out Prue, I think that, you know, it's a pretty powerful warlock, but he's also kind of creepy too in his own way and all that. And then I also really like the episode Murphy's Luck, where it's the Darklighter, or some people call him the Spirit Killer. Amy Adams stars in this episode, and in it, he's like forcing her to keep having bad luck. And in it, you know, Prue kind of takes the lead in terms of trying to help this innocent, but she ends up getting affected by this guy. And then I think the other top 5 villain from the original first 3 seasons would be Barbas, the Demon of Fear. You know, his episode, it definitely forces the witches to have sort of their introspective fears brought out, externalized, like the moment where Prue is like in the shower and it's like filling up with water and she's terrified, but then it sort of like brings the sisters back together, because I think that when we're afraid as people, we can kind of come to each other with our fears, and it makes us get more bonded and closer, because it also then sort of brings up the memories of their mother, Patty. I think, you know, in terms of the first 3 seasons, obviously late 90s, early 2000s, there are cheesier effects, but those are the villains that I really like from those first 3 seasons. I think that they're good, solid choices. And I would like to honorably mention the Elders, because I feel like they spent a lot of time messing up things for Piper and Leo and made things unnecessarily difficult just because they could. But Gina, what are your top 5 from the later seasons?
So my top 5 from the later seasons would be Gideon, and he is killed on It's a Bad, Bad World. he's especially a demon because he's portrayed as being Leo's mentor, and they thought, all the Charmed Ones thought, he's not evil, he's an elder. So it's just like really unexpected. He's like the last person you would think when they find out. They reveal who's after Wyatt, and he basically says it's for the greater good.
Yeah.
And then Leo ends up killing him, which then Leo stops being an elder.
Oh yeah. See, it's fuzzier for me, but now that you say that, it starts to come back. And then who's another one that you love from the later seasons?
Anku, and they vanquish him on something Wiccan, This Way Goes. And Zanku is definitely one of the, I think, harder villains that they had to kill, because after they change the world with the avatars, they have to work with him to go back to the way things were. And he studied them and he knew a lot about them, so it took them a lot longer to be able to vanquish him, and that's in the 7th season. The next one would be the Source, which they vanquish him and all hell breaks loose. And they do vanquish him at the cost of Cole having to absorb the Hollow, and then the Source's powers going into Cole, which led to the downfall of Cole and Phoebe. The next one would be Cole, who was vanquished in Centennial Charmed, and then he was also vanquished for good in Whatever Happened to a Demon with a Soul. He was actually vanquished 4 times during the series, and he's one of the top 5 demons of the series, because not only, was his love with Phoebe, spanned throughout 5 or 6 seasons, but he also, took on many forms when he was Balthazar, to then being the Source, and then getting all of the powers in the demonic wasteland, and then trying to win Phoebe back.
Well, I think he's I don't mind villains that are like 2-dimensional or that's all their thing, but I think the best villains, the best characters in TV series, movies, are ones that are multifaceted, that are 3-dimensional, and it keeps up the tension, because you are like, you want him to be good, but there's also a part of you that always kind of wants him to be bad too, and it keeps up the suspense. You never know how you're going to trust him, or if you can trust him, and I think that the sort of longevity that his character got sort of made things fresh. It made things a little bit more interesting throughout the series.
And then the last one would be Christy, who comes in the 8th season, and they're talked about as the ultimate power, and the Charmed Ones mentor her sister Billy. And then in the last 2 episodes, they have a huge battle between Billy and Christy and the Charmed Ones, and Christy is vanquished in the last episode, Forever Charmed.
Well, and I agree that I really like the character of Christy too, or at least the villain, because similar to Cole, there's like a sort of level of betrayal. Cole has betrayed Phoebe countless times. The Charmed Ones have betrayed him. But Christy, it's interesting because it's not based on, romantic love, the betrayal. It's based on sort of sisterly love. They bring Billy into the fold, and again, I don't know if there's like a debate out there in the Charmed world, but I think that Billy, I liked Billy, the character of Billy. I thought she fit in. I thought it was fresh. I actually liked her. And I didn't watch the series week to week. I watched it all binged. So I definitely was like running out of steam, and when she came on, so I felt like betrayed when she chose her sister, which makes total sense. She's been searching her whole life for her sister, or wondering what happened. But I also like that sort of, it adds shading to the series, because I think that Charmed is is a classic series now. Clearly we have the reboot. Now, what do you think in terms of the villains now? Now, keep in mind, I've only seen parts of the first season. I haven't really gone through this series yet. I'm waiting for, now that there's going to be a 3rd season, is that right?
Yes.
I probably will get really starting to watch it now, but I was hesitant because I'm like, I enjoyed the first couple episodes, but I was worried that it would get canceled or something. I'm like, I don't want to devote myself to this and then it gets canceled. But without giving any spoilers away, do you think the villains from the original series, or at least these top 10 that we mentioned, are better or worse or even to the ones that are now being in the new series?
I would say they're better. I would say
The original series?
yes,
Okay.
the reboot. It like with the original Charmed, you know, every episode there was a demon that they had to like. There was always like a crisis or something they had to take care of every episode. With the reboot, it's not like that. I mean, it doesn't seem like there's like as big of villains that they have to take care of. Or I mean, they might just be getting things going. I don't know. They might kind of have a different like how they're gonna do things than the original where there was one every episode.
Right. Interesting. And so you prefer the every like episodic, like every week there's a new villain. You enjoy that as opposed to like how they're doing it on the new series?
Yeah, I enjoy at least like one every episode, or if it's like a really big one, like with the source where it's over a few episodes,
Yeah, okay.
or if there's like a little one thrown in there that they have to take care of.
Interesting. See, I can't really respond to these. Like I said, I haven't seen the newer ones as much, but I would have to. I feel like responding blindly that I would have to agree with you. At least every few episodes. I prefer things like because I'm not big on cliffhangers and stuff, and that would be my fear from understanding what you're saying is that I would be worried a show would get canceled before they resolved something with the villain. Whereas at least on like the original series, you know that the villains at least have been destroyed. You know, you might
Yeah.
not, you know, the show wrapped up thankfully and it had a beautiful series finale. But if it had sort of been canceled, at least most of the major sort of villainy arcs would have been done. And I feel like that's a risk you take with a new series. And I think a lot of shows do that, where they worry about getting people back. So they have sort of like, well, you have to watch to the fourth season. Well, what if they don't give you a fourth season? You know?
Yeah. Well, and that's like what they did with Shax, where Prue wasn't really meant to die.
Yeah, yeah,
It
okay.
did,
I
mean,
definitely want to talk about this.
if you watch it, you don't think that she died. Like they don't clearly show it like, oh, this big thing, Prue died.
Right.
They just come back the next season and it's her funeral.
Yeah, I was
So
hoping. See, I was wondering what you felt when I brought up checks. That's what I was kind of implying that I don't know if I would have remembered him as a villain so much if that hadn't been such like a pivotal moment of the series. But because it is, I feel obligated to mention Shax. I like the look of him. I think he's an interesting character. I wish we would have, because they do wrap it up in the fourth season episode when we first meet who's the
Paige.
Paige, and I think that's cool. But it would have been cool to see a character like that come back later on. Say Shannen Doherty had like agreed to do the show, come back or something. It would have been. I think it would have been a really cool villain because he doesn't really speak so much and stuff.
yeah,
But anyway, you know, they do wrap it up, and yeah, I just. But would we remember him if he hadn't done, you know, what he did in the series?
I don't think so.
Yeah, but again, but because it's hard to answer. We don't live in a parallel universe. I love the character and the villain. I hate what he did because she was my favorite character. I will always love Prue, and I guess that's probably why I love the original or the first three seasons more. I love Rose McGowan too. I love them all, but Shannen Doherty, I love Shannen Doherty. So when he took her from me, but yeah, I think too, you know, I mentioned Barbas, and he's clearly one. I said the episode out of sight, but he's one that comes back again and again and again. I think he's a good
Yeah.
villain, you know, interesting. He's got those creepy teeth too. He has like weird kind of messed up teeth.
Yeah.
But I mean, what better villain than somebody who agitates your fear, you know, who kind of comes in? Because we were talking before filming that you kind of you were gonna mention Barbas too.
Yeah, I was just watching the episode where the cleaners were going to frame Morris for a murder to clean up because magic had been exposed, and the Charmed
Yeah.
Ones called the Council of Elders, and Barbas is their opposing council, and basically he made a deal with a demon to possess Inspector Sheridan to videotape it so magic would be exposed so he could get out of purgatory. So, I mean, he just like keeps reinserting himself and finding a way to get out of purgatory, and he keeps coming back. And I mean, I think it's also worth noting that he's not one of the demons that like always went and attacked them. Like one time he like put bricks up all over the windows and the walls so they couldn't get out. Like a lot of it's like mind games with him
Sure,
too.
sure. I would like to also mention too, while not making my top 10 list, although very close, I do like when the sisters get evil or villainous too. Like one I remember is like Phoebe. I can't remember the episode, but it's like where they go back into the 20s and it's like she's like the cousin. Like it's Prue, Piper, and Phoebe, but she's kind of like evil and they're all plotting, like two of them are plotting the one's death. and Phoebe is sort of a villain. Remember they're like back in the 20s in the house?
Oh, we're on All Hallows Eve.
Something like that. But anyway, but I like those moments too because it usually mirrors the sisters having some sort of problem in present day. But then I don't know, there's always that fun the cat fights or there's something more personal to it. Like
Yeah.
when we were talking about with villains, we like episodic villains. We like that they're resolved. But what's nice about it when you have a sister kind of going evil or something, it's already ingrained the sort of personal connections that we have with them. So like when they're doing something evil, it usually comes off comedic. Like Phoebe becomes a banshee at one point and stuff like
Yeah.
that. Those are fun because we feel for the sister. We know that she's good, which gives the villain then some sort of like arc or some sort of again shading. I like the two-dimensional ones too, but I like when there's something creepy to it, like the Grimlocks too. I think they come back at a later date.
Yeah, and All Hallows Eve,
Okay.
all the demons that they vanquished
Okay,
come back
yeah,
to life.
yeah, I remember that now.
Yeah.
But they're also, even in their like singular episode, there's something dark about it. Like they have the kids, they kidnap these kids and blind them, but it's also a big episode because that's when Andy first finds out, I think, about the sisters. And I also enjoy it because it's like an episode where the newspaper or like outside people find out about them. I always think that's scary in of itself, or you're worried about the sisters and stuff. But obviously, we watch the show for the charmed ones, but we wouldn't have the charmed ones without their villains. And I think these are just some of our favorite villains to talk about on the show. Were there any others you wanted to discuss or anything?
I think that's it.
I have to agree. But tell us below, what are some of your favorite charmed villains? Like I said, that you can't have the charm ones when they don't have something to fight. But thanks everybody for watching another episode of 411 Pop Culture. I'm your host, Justin Steele. Thank you, Gina, for joining me.
You're welcome.
Right, everybody have a good one.